gracious God, the gifts and the graces that you have given to us. Lord, we especially pray for all those who are involved in helping grow awareness of drug use in our community, in the community at large. We pray, Lord, especially for all of the will that you have given to us to overcome difficulties. We pray also for those who are currently experiencing addiction. We pray for those who have overcome addiction. Lord, we pray those of us, whether it's an addiction to alcohol or gambling or any vice, Lord, allow us to always know that you are much more merciful, much more powerful, and with your grace and with our free will, we're called to rely on you and to be able to overcome all things through you. We pray, Lord, especially for the work of Families Against Narcotics and for Peter's Angels in our community, that they may continuously be a beacon of hope and wisdom and understanding. We pray also for the parents of those who have children who are struggling with addictions. Lord, grant them your peace, your understanding, and your patience. So we pray, Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So I just want to, again, welcome you, and I just want to thank the coordinators of Real Talk, which is our monthly gathering. Please, as you're being seated, I just ask that you continuously be respectful, because we're about to have our speaker address us. Just a few things. This is an ongoing conversation that should be had. This isn't just a one-time thing where you come and you just kind of leave. It's important. Unfortunately, and as Judge Davis can tell us, probably the people that most should be here aren't. And that's okay, right? Not everybody is at that place, whether they're struggling with addiction or have a child who's facing an addiction. But that's why it's important for us to, one, never condemn or judge, but rather show Christ's love and his mercy, and really to communicate the truth that we're able to overcome obstacles. And so that's something that Honorable Judge Lynda Davis has been doing for the community, not just locally, but now on a national level. She is the president of FAN, which is Families Against Narcotics, and she's also a district court judge in 41B District Court in Clinton Township. And I'm sure, and I hope, I have heard her story, and I hope she's going to be able to share some of that and how she became involved in this very worthy cause. At times, she will not know what impact she has on those that she encounters, and we won't know either, right, what kind of effect we will have. But we pray that the Lord continues to strengthen you, and thank you for being here with us. So, the Honorable Judge Davis.
As a matter of fact, can you just move this? Okay, all right. It is really a pleasure to be here with you. This is an event that we've been working on for almost a year to have me come and talk to this group, and I want you to know how pleased I am at the number of people that are here. I oftentimes am invited to speak at churches, and I'll go and there will be 5 or 6 parents that show up. And this is really a topic that all parents and all kids need to be discussing and be open about. Addiction is a problem in our country because we are oftentimes silent about it. We're humiliated to admit that this may be happening in our family. We're afraid that we're going to be judged by someone else as a result of having a child or a loved one that is an addict that lives amongst us. And as a result of that, this addiction has gotten out of hand in our country because we don't have dialogue about it. So hopefully tonight is the beginning of a dialogue for your community just like your priest said, that will be one of many talks that we can have about this topic. I want to tell you a little bit about myself because I think it's important for you to understand why a judge is even talking to you about this. I used to be a high school teacher, and I taught kids that were junior high and high school age. I then went back to school and I got my counseling degree, and I worked with young people who were troubled, oftentimes who had been kicked out of school for drinking and drugs. Back then it was not the magnitude of the drugs that we see now, but there was a lot of drinking that was going on. Marijuana was very big, and LSD was really big. So kids were being kicked out of school for that. And as awful as that was, those drugs were not deadly. I then went back to law school, got my law degree, and for 13 years I ran our drug unit at the prosecutor's office in Macomb County. Carl Marliga was my boss, and he put me in charge of doing all the drug prosecutions in our county. And I was responsible for locking up a lot of young people and older people that were in the throes of addiction, that were using drugs illegally. And I thought I was doing the right thing by putting them in prison. There was a time that I thought that if you were a drug addict or an alcoholic, that you must just be a bad person. I looked at it as a moral failing, and I did not understand addiction as a disease. Then we started seeing in our community something that we had never seen before, and that was the rise of heroin. I was having a lot of young people who were 17 and 18 years old come into my court, and I do an adult court, so I did not see real young kids, but I was seeing young adults coming into my courtroom all the time that were accused of theft crimes. They had stolen something, and it was often things that I didn't understand, like they were stealing Infamil that you use to feed infants. I did not know at that time that Infamil was used to make drugs with. And so it was oftentimes a big market item that people would steal to do that. And parents would come into courtroom with their young person, and they would think they were there just because of some petty theft. And all of a sudden I'd start asking questions like, you've never been in trouble before, and now you're here and you're stealing. What's going on? And after talking a little bit, they would confess that they were using drugs, and they were oftentimes pain medications and or heroin. That was alarming to me because I ran our drug unit for 13 years and I had only seen one drug case that involved heroin in all the time that I was doing that. So that was really concerning. And then I lived in Fraser, Michigan at the time, and we had 9 deaths in Fraser and Roseville, all 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that had died of heroin overdoses. And it was like an epidemic of heroin in our high school, which I didn't understand. And then one night at 4 o'clock in the morning, I had gotten up. I was going to go away for a long weekend trip to visit a friend of mine in Florida. And I heard my 17-year-old daughter in her bedroom crying. My daughter was a straight-A student. She had been accepted at every college that she had applied to. She was a gymnast. She competed, did cheerleading, competitive cheerleading all over the country. We went to many states. She won many national championships for her athletic ability. And I had just been at school 2 weeks before this night that I heard her crying in her room, and had parent-teacher conferences where all of her teachers told me what a great student she was, how I had done such a great job of raising her that not only did she get along with her peer group, but she also was very friendly with teachers and got along with adults, carried herself well, was getting straight A's, and I walked out of there thinking I was the mother of the year, that I was really an exceptional mother, and that we had dodged the bullet. We were graduating from high school that year. She was going to be off to college, and I thought I had done everything right. And then I hear her in her room crying, and she had started dating a young man that I was not real fond of. We had had many discussions about this, that I did not think he was good enough for, but most moms don't think most guys are good enough for their daughters. So this was pretty typical conversations. They were not knockdown battles. So when she told me that she had something to share with me that I was going to hate her for, I couldn't imagine what it was other than the fact that she was going to tell me that she was pregnant. And I was mortified by that. I thought, oh my gosh, her life is going to be derailed. She's not going to be able to go to college. She's going to be raising this child. And I had big visions of what her life was going to be. As the minutes unfolded, I learned that that was not the problem. She announced to me that it was something much worse. And I couldn't imagine what that was going to be. And in the next 2 hours, as she started getting sicker and sicker, she told me that she was addicted to heroin. I'm going to tell you that that stopped me in my tracks. I've been through a lot of hardships. I'd lost my father at a very young age. I'd been through a divorce. I had really gone through a lot of suffering in my life with deaths of people that I cared very dearly about. But nothing affected me like hearing my child was addicted to narcotics. Because all of those stereotypes flooded my mind of, oh my gosh, what are people going to think of me? What are they going to think of her? I'll never get elected again because I'm an elected official. I thought if people find out that my daughter's an addict and I'm making decisions about people with drug issues, nobody is ever going to vote for me again, and my career is going to be over. This flood of thought instantly went through my brain. And I was really upset. But like most mothers do when we're in crisis mode, we deal with the problem that's at hand and we start making decisions. So I started getting on the phone and calling around to find out where we could find treatment for her. And I will tell you that I began to learn right then and there what a broken system we had, because I couldn't find treatment for her. She was 17 years old, so she was not a child. She wasn't 18 yet, so she wasn't an adult, and almost every facility I called said that they couldn't take her. So as I was on the phone doing this, she started throwing up, getting diarrhea. She was in excruciating pain because coming off of heroin is, they say it's like the flu 1,000 times over. I've never done that, so I can't attest to that myself, but I can tell you that watching her go through it was one of the worst experiences of being a mother that I've ever gone through. So I finally just put her in the car and drove her to our local hospital, which I served on the board of at that time. And I called the CEO, and because I'm who I am, I got her admitted. And they don't normally do detox in hospitals, but they did me a favor and took her in. So I'm dressed in a sweatsuit, my hair's not combed, I have no makeup on. I'm just looking like a regular old mom standing there. And once they got her hooked up to IVs and started giving her medication to calm her down a little bit, and I'm going to tell you, I've never witnessed pain like what she was going through. She couldn't lay still, her body was twitching, she was sick at her stomach, her head was hurting, her back was hurting, her joints were hurting, because heroin affects all of those things in our body. When we're using them, we don't feel that because it masks the pain. But when you try to come off of pain medications or heroin, the pain is excruciating. And so they finally got her calmed down. And I will tell you that calm down doesn't mean like sitting like you guys are now, but she at least wasn't writhing in pain. And I walked out into the hallway to call my secretary to tell her I was going to be off for the next week while we tried to figure out what we were going to do and how we were going to handle this. And while I was standing there, I heard a nurse and a doctor talking by the nurse's station about the pathetic mom who was crying over her junkie daughter and that I should just let her die. I don't think I've ever felt so little and so ashamed in my entire life. Here I was watching what I thought was my daughter dying at the time, because that is exactly what it looked like. And here were a doctor and a nurse that are supposed to be there to help, that were judging not only me, but also my daughter, and making a determination that her life was not worth taking care of. Over the next several days while I sat there with her, I will tell you that she got the worst care that you can possibly imagine. The person that was in the bed next to her would ring their buzzer, and boy, people would rush to the room to help. my daughter or I would push her button, and we'd push it again, and push it again, and push it again, and no one would come to help because we were just the loser parent and the loser kid that were laying in the bed. I knew right then and there that if we ever got through this, and I will tell you that at that time, I didn't think we would. Everybody that I called about my daughter told me, you know, she's going to die. Kids don't get better from opiate addiction, they die. So I was sitting there watching her go through this, thinking that she was going to die. And I'm trying to help her, and no one was there to comfort us. We always say that it's the disease where nobody brings casseroles. You know, if you have a sick child of cancer or some other illness, a heart problem, people bring you casseroles and they make your life very easy to live while you're spending night after night at the hospital. Well, trust me, nobody brought me casseroles, but they also would have never had a chance to because I wasn't telling anybody about this, not ever. So we finally got through that, and I did get her into a treatment facility. And my neighbor, who was a police officer, came to me and said, I want to plan a town hall meeting, much like what we're doing here tonight, and invite the community in to talk about this because I am going to overdoses day after day after day. And there's a lot of kids in our community that are using opiates and heroin. We need to start talking about it. So I was going to that meeting as the judge, not as a mom of a heroin addict, but as the judge, because I had no intentions of ever talking public about this ever. And at that meeting, there were a lot of parents there that were crying because they were going through the same thing that I was going through. And we all felt pretty lost and alone in this battle because there wasn't a place where parents could go to get information. There wasn't a place where we could go that we didn't feel judged and talked about. So at that meeting, there was a lot of sharing about what was happening in our community, and there were a lot of fingers being pointed. But they weren't all from our community, we learned. There were people coming from Grosse Pointe, Armada, Roseville, Sterling Heights, Shelby Township. That room was full of people from other communities. And so we started realizing this wasn't just a problem at Fraser High School, it was a problem everywhere. And this was something that parents all over Macomb County, and maybe even beyond, were dealing with this. But there was no place for us to go that we could meet one another or talk about it. Well, as I was sitting there, I was starting to feel hypocritical. That here are all these parents crying and talking about this, and yet I'm sitting here being silent because I don't want to be embarrassed about my daughter. And I honestly believe it was God that told me, you've got to speak up. You're a community leader, and if you start talking about this, other people will start talking. Now I'm sharing this with you because I have many, many Chaldean friends. And I know that this is a huge problem in your community, and it is a growing problem. And one of the reasons that it is a growing, big problem in your community is because you are not talking about it. And you need to start being there for each other. This is, in fact, a disease. Now, I have read every book you can find on addiction at this point, and I can tell you clearly without question that this is not a moral failing, it is a brain disease. And if we had a child that was a diabetic or who had cancer, we wouldn't think twice about talking publicly about that and asking for support and leaning on people that we cared about. But because this is addiction, and for so many years in our country we have treated this like a moral failing, we are losing a generation of kids. So we need to start having this conversation with one another. And this isn't about Caucasian white people, and it's not about Chaldeans. I was just telling some of your leaders that I spent a lot of time at the Muslim church talking about this, because they too are losing a lot of young people. I've been to Jewish churches talking about this because they too are losing a lot of people to addiction to opiates. I've spoken at several Chaldean events before because they too are losing their young people and not only their young people, but also seniors and middle-aged people to addiction. This does not discriminate. It doesn't care what ethnic background you are. It doesn't care what economic affiliation you come from. It doesn't care what religion you are or even what age you are. And it might interest you to know that the largest death rate from opiates in this country are not of our young people. The age range where we're losing the most people are 35 to 43 years old. And the reason for that is because we're a blue-collar community, and people get hurt at work, and they're prescribed pain medications. Those pain medications like Vicodin and oxycodone and hydrocodone are synthetic heroin. They work on your body just like taking heroin. And 73% of the people that get addicted to opiates and to heroin, they start with a legal prescription. My daughter was one of those individuals. Unbeknownst to me, she had I knew she had surgery. 6 months before that, she had hurt her knee in a cheerleading accident. She fell, and she ripped her meniscus, and she had to have knee surgery, and she was prescribed Vicodin. And being the good mom that I am, every 4 hours, I was there giving her one of these pills, not realizing that I was giving her synthetic heroin and that those pills were highly addictive. We noticed personality changes in her almost immediately, but we didn't tie it to the medication she was taking. We just thought she was a teenager, and teenagers oftentimes aren't nice people, you know, and they sometimes talk back to you, and they sometimes don't listen to you. And so I was just thinking this was normal teenage behavior. Little did I know that she was already developing a dependency and became addicted to those pills as a result of a real injury that occurred. We don't think about taking our children to the doctor to get a wisdom tooth pulled or dental work done, and that dentist prescribes very strong narcotics to them, and within 2 days, young brains are already dependent on those drugs. So that's important for you to understand so that you can have conversation with your doctors. Don't give them to your young people. I know that we live in a society where we pop pills for everything. We take pills to go to sleep. We take pills when we're down in the dumps. We take pills for almost everything. And so it's very natural for us to not want to feel things in our community. We don't want to cry. We don't want to deal with emotions. And I'll tell you, if you turn on the TV, I understand why kids want to numb themselves. We live in such a negative world. We never focus on the positive anything of what anybody is doing. We always want to focus on the negative that people do, not the positives. And then you add to young people all of the social media where they're being shamed and bullied on social media. And we live at a time where being a kid is tough. It's really hard. And then we've added to that. I'm the first to admit that I gave my daughter everything. You know, when I raised my son, I have children that are 20 years apart, and when I was raising my son, I didn't have much. And so we really struggled, and he didn't get a whole lot. But then I was a judge, so I made good money, and when my daughter needed something, I gave it to her. I was very permissive with what I would let her do. She was a good kid. She wasn't getting in trouble, but I didn't say no very often to her. And I think we're teaching our kids how not to cope. We're not teaching coping skills. So then they turn into teenagers, and I'll give you the best example that I can give in sports. We have little league teams, and it used to be that when I was a kid and I played sports, and I was very athletic, so I played them often, if you didn't show up for practice and you weren't good, you sat on the bench. You didn't get to play. Now, we have helicopter moms and dads that insist that you play the same number of minutes that everybody else plays, even if you're not very good, and you also get a trophy at the end of it, even if you come in last place. That is not teaching coping skills. That's not the real world. The real world doesn't pat you on the back for doing bad. They pat you on the back for winning, for being competitive, for doing the right things. And so we're raising a generation of kids that don't know how to deal with failure. They don't know how to deal with defeat. And so when they get a little bit older and all of a sudden a boyfriend breaks up with them or a girlfriend breaks up with them, they don't get the A on the first test after they've gotten A's all these years, they don't know how to deal with it. And so they're starting to take pills and other things. And the real one that you need to be concerned about, and I'm not going to back off on the pill thing, that is the deadly one. You need to be diligent, and I'm going to tell you some real good things that you can do to make sure your kids don't have access. Because I will tell you that I work with thousands of young addicts all over the state of Michigan. And do you know who the #1 dealer they tell me they had? Doctors, that's one of them. Anybody else? Parents and grandparents. Those were their first drug dealers because they had pills, prescription pills in their medicine cabinets that they had access to, and they could take 1 or 2 of them and nobody would ever miss them. And if you stop to think about what I just said, it only takes 2 days of taking these pills where you start developing a dependency on them, then they're going to aunts and uncles' houses and taking them, and to grandma and grandpa's houses and taking them. So you've got to be diligent and not keep these medications in your cupboards. And I know a lot of people will say, well, those prescriptions are really expensive, and what if I get in pain down the line and I need that? Or what if my kid has another wisdom tooth pulled and they need those pills? The new CDC guidelines about opiate taking says that it never should be the first course of treatment, that you should not be taking those medications to begin with. Opiates were developed to treat dying cancer patients, not kids getting wisdom teeth pulled out. Ibuprofen and Motrin, I had 4 wisdom teeth pulled out at one time. I took ibuprofen and guess what? I lived. It's okay. You know, you don't have to be pain-free to be healthy in our society. And pain can be a real good thing. It stops you from doing things you shouldn't be doing. If you have a knee injury and you're supposed to be resting it, you can take opiates and get up and play football on it. But you're going to re-injure that knee, and you're going to become an addict if you do that. So you have to weigh, is it worth giving up football for a week and resting an injury? Or should I go out and take all of these opiate pills? And I know coaches oftentimes push taking the medication so that you can play. And that's why it's so important for parents to be advocate for their young people. To say, no, he's out for the next week. He's going to rest. I have a grandson that pitches for De La Salle. He sat out for 3 months because of a back injury, because his parents would not give him opiates to take. And guess what? They still took him back on the team. He's a good ball player. You're not going to ruin your chances by saying no and taking care of yourself in an appropriate way. The other thing that you really need to be aware of, and you have one of your officers here that is taking her time to teach you about these drugs. Vaping in our schools are huge. And just by a show of hands, and I want you to be really honest, and I know you have your parents with you, and I'm not asking you to confess that you ever use these, but how many young people here think it's safe to vape?
Our teenagers. Yes,
Okay.
you think
I appreciate your honesty.
Come on, be honest.
Okay, it's not. And here's what I want the young people that are here to leave with tonight. You have no idea what chemicals you're putting in your body when you're smoking them. Most people are buying vaping devices at gas stations, and they're buying chemicals at gas stations that go in those vaping devices. And those are all in the back, and you parents need to go back there and talk to your officers so you know what you're looking for. Be diligent. Go through backpacks, go through drawers. Your kids do not have a right to privacy as long as they are living in your home and you're paying the bills. Okay? Check on them. And make sure, I know the kids are all going, oh my God, this one's crazy. But it's true. All right. You've got to be diligent. These drugs are dangerous. We have had kids overdose with vaping. We have kids that have had brain troubles that have gone into comas from vaping. because these are chemicals that are made by men. They are not FDA approved. They are not safe substances to put in your body. And kids are trying almost anything. We get one thing resolved and start educating about them, and we find another thing. Another thing that's coming up is the ballot to make marijuana legal. Anybody brave enough to raise their hand and think they think that's a good idea?
No, it's not a good idea.
It's not. Okay? THC it's not your grandpa's marijuana. Okay? Kids were smoking marijuana when I was a kid. It was 3% marijuana. It's as strong as 70 and 80% pure THC right now. And if you looked at the studies out of Colorado, they have the largest percentage of young people using drugs there of any other state in the union. 14-year-olds are dying from marijuana use because you don't know that what you're buying is pure marijuana. We've had 2 deaths in Macomb County on marijuana that was laced with fentanyl. You don't know what you're getting when you buy it. There are no regulations on it. My nephew lives in Colorado, and he says he will no longer take his children to Denver. That there are homeless people laying all over the streets. It smells like urine, and you walk in a cloud of dust all the time because of the smoke that's there. That is not a healthy environment to raise our children in. We don't have enough studies to show the effect that it has on their brain. We have no idea what long-term situations will bear. And when people are smoking marijuana and give birth to babies, the percentage of birth defects go up exponentially. So we need to educate ourselves before we pull a lever and vote for something that we don't understand. You know, Big Pharma came out years ago and they said heroin was a safe drug, okay? Cocaine was another one. We used to put it in Coca-Cola. And we were told by pharmacy companies that that was safe to do. We have gone through this with almost every drug. The opiates, we were told by doctors, these are safe, they're not addictive. Well, I want you to think back on all those things I just mentioned and how good were those studies? What has it done to our nation that we bought into that? And the same big money people are the people that are pushing this marijuana legislation. So please, please educate yourselves before you pull that lever and open up another door for our young people to become vulnerable to. It's really important that we not create an environment where drugs are on every corner. And the bigger thing about that, and I appreciate your honesty, sir, I'm not here to embarrass you at all, but it's also being marketed to young people. Drugs are often marketed to young people. Gummy bears, it's in sucker form. They put them in cookies and brownies. And who likes those things? Well, I like them, number one, but that was marijuana in them. But they're being marketed to our young people. And so you have to be very careful. Do you want your kids running into a neighborhood store and picking up what they think is innocently gummy bears and getting something that's laced with very heavy THC? Because that's what we're opening the door to with this legislation. There are no regulations on it. So we need to be really careful with that. We live at a time where education is so important for you guys, not only for young people, but for adults as well, because you have to be vigilant for your young person. Their brains don't develop, and I'm going to tell you, I love young people. I've worked with them my whole life, but your brains don't develop until you're 25. And so that means you are not making good decisions for yourself until you're 25 years of age. That means that mom and dad has to make those tough decisions for them. So get involved in your local coalition. Start coming to fan meetings. We welcome everybody. Get involved in the groups that are out there trying to educate you about this. And for young people, stop and ask yourself what it's worth to have a few moments of pleasure before you put something into your system that you don't understand. If you don't know what's in a product, you shouldn't be putting it into your body. The risks are just so great right now. When you stop to think about, we are losing 72,000 people a year to overdoses. That's one person every 7.5 minutes. That means that while I have been talking to this group, 3 to 4 people have died of overdoses in the United States while I've been talking to you. Those are huge, staggering numbers. And we need to be aware of the fact that this isn't going to happen in the next neighborhood over or in the next town over. This is happening right here and sometimes right in your own homes, and you're not even aware of it. So what do? The first thing I want you to do is go get all the medications out of your cupboard and take them to the Shelby Police Department and dispose of them. If you need another prescription down the line, trust me, it will probably not be opiates, because doctors are being monitored now not to write them because of new legislation that's been passed. Ibuprofen and Tylenol taken in combination work just like Vicodin. They're just as strong and they're not addictive, so you don't need those drugs. We also have a problem with things like Xanax and benzodiazepines. The other thing I want to leave you with is not only to dispose of them, but some people have legitimate pain and they need medications. Keep them locked up just like you would a gun, if you had a gun in your house. Get a safe. That way, if it's tampered with, you at least know a young person in your house has a problem and you can look further. So make sure you get rid of them or lock them up safely. The other thing that I'm going to tell you to do is to make sure that you talk to your kids and talk to them all the time. Now, I will tell you that will not stop them from using drugs. But if they know you're open to talk to, if they do make a wrong decision, hopefully they'll be like my daughter was and come to you and say, look, I'm in trouble, I need help. And start talking to each other. Don't judge each other if one of you has a child that has an addiction. Reach out to those parents and embrace them. Also, if you have someone struggling with addiction and you don't know what to do, Families Against Narcotics started a program about 1.5 years ago where we have partnered now with 69 police departments in 8 different counties. You can walk into those police departments, say that you have a drug problem, whether it's alcohol, cocaine, marijuana, or opiates. Tell them that you want help. They will call one of our 650 angels, which any of you can volunteer to be, by the way. All you have to do is be non-judgmental and compassionate, and you can be an angel. You volunteer 2 hours a month to help us out with this program. We launched about 18 months ago, and we have already placed 1,800 people into treatment in that short period of time. So we are here to help on the back side of this as well. I know that you have other speakers, so I don't want to dominate all of the time, but I was told to ask questions when I got done with my presentation. Does anybody have any questions you would, yes?
The proposal, so we all know what it is to vote no on.
Yes, it's the marijuana proposal. It's a recreational, we already have legal medical marijuana. So a lot of people will say to me, well, you know, but I heard that it's good if you have cancer, it helps with pain. It's not stopping people from taking it. It's recreational marijuana where anybody can just go out and buy marijuana at any one of the hundreds of stores that are waiting to open up if this passes. That's what you should vote no on, okay? Yes, sir. Yep, you're a sir today. I can't hear you. Real loud. How do they make cocaine?
How do they make cocaine?
Okay, that might be a better question for your police officer back there. But it's made from a plant, and it's turned into a powder. There's 2 different kinds of cocaine. There's a powder cocaine and crack cocaine. Crack cocaine is much more addictive, but both of them are very addictive. All right, and you basically buy that illegally on the street. You cannot go in and buy cocaine in a store. So you would have to be looking out on the street. It's called the black market to be able to buy that. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, you said the system is broken. The system is broken, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
What do we have?
Okay, well, I can tell you, and I'm not one to pull punches. I would love to tell you that, hey, I've been working day and night on this for 11 years and we've almost got this licked, but that's not the truth. Okay, we have millions of people in the United States that are addicted right now to opiate narcotics. And that's not going away overnight, and we are going to lose a lot of them. Macomb County has one of the highest death rates of any other county in Michigan, unfortunately. And my prediction is for the next 5 to 10 years, that is going to continue to increase. Because we have all these people that are already addicted, there is not enough treatment beds available to them, and unfortunately, those people are likely to die. Now, I don't want to leave here with you thinking like I did, that, oh my gosh, my kid is going to die because she said these kids are all going to die. There is help out there, but you've got to be willing to reach out for it. I work with young people on a daily basis that have 3 months clean, 9 months clean. My daughter is 9 years clean from opiates. There is hope in recovery, but you have to know what you're doing, and that's why groups like ours are so important to partner with, so that you know what are the treatment facilities that can be trusted in our area. What does good treatment look like? Because there's a lot of facilities out there that are bad facilities. You need to be diligent. You need to do your homework and figure out where you're going. On another note, I do run the Governor's Opiate Task Force, and we just passed 28 pieces of legislation, and we have another 15 pages of things that we are still working on to try to get this under control. But it's once you let the cat out of the bag, it's really hard to catch it all and to get it back contained again. So this isn't going to be something that can happen overnight. You said the system is broken, and it's broken at every level, from parenting to our kids wanting to numb themselves and not feel anything. Police officers used to lock people up, and it was just a revolving door where they locked them up, they went to jail, they came back out, within 72 hours they relapsed, wasting taxpayer money. But we've done it for 50, 75, 100 years, so we kept doing it. Judges like me were ignorant. We kept locking people up thinking we were making society safe, when all we were doing were just housing addicts that were going to use again when they got up. It's an absolute proven fact that whether you lock somebody up for 7 hours, 7 days, 7 months, or 7 years, within 72 hours from release from jail, if they are an addict, will be out on the street using again. Jail does not work. So we're seeing movements all over the nation where jails are being turned into treatment facilities, where we're using medically assisted treatment. I started the first medically assisted treatment at the Macomb County Jail with my drug court, where we get you off of opiates for 7 days, so you're in jail for 7 days. You're kept away from the population that's dangerous. We get you stabilized. We release you on what's called a Vivitrol shot. It lasts for 30 days, and it blocks your cravings for drugs. It works, but very few people know about it. And that's why it's important that you connect with groups that do know about it, that can direct you on how you can best help someone that you love who is facing an addiction. There really are good, viable treatments out there. It's just that we don't talk about them, so people don't know about them. It's, once again, being educated, finding out the facts, and then using them and not staying silent about this. That's the first thing you have to do, is break that silence and start talking about this as a community. And if you're brave enough to do it, believe me, there are 5 more people in this room that need help too. And if you say it, they'll say it. It's just like, I thought that I was going to be so judged when I said this. It's funny, a judge being judged, but I thought I was going to be so judged when I came out talking about my daughter's addiction. It has been totally the opposite for me. I cannot tell you the outpouring of support that I've gotten. Look at all of you that came to listen to me talk. You know, it's been a remarkable thing that's happened. I can remember back when my daughter was in treatment, and parents don't realize it, but you're every bit as sick as your child is. We just don't realize it. I remember back when my daughter was in treatment, we had her at this very expensive place because I was naive and I thought the more you spent, the better the treatment is, and that's really not true. So we spent $30,000. Parents had to do a 1-week program with them. And for the first exercise they did, they had our kids draw a pie, and then they had to slice that pie and put education, spiritual, social, and they had to list all these different segments of their life and how their addiction had affected those things. And then they put them away in their folder. 7 days later, they gave the parents that same pie chart. We didn't know each other was doing this. And we had to do the same pie chart. And when we laid them side by side, they mirrored each other exactly. Exactly. You know, I got mad at God. My daughter was mad at God. I stopped going out with my friends because all I wanted to talk about was how sick my daughter was. She stopped going out with her friends for different reasons, but she isolated herself. We quit going to church together as a family because you can't take a kid high to church. Somebody will see it, somebody will know it, so we quit doing that. Her grades went down. She started not showing up for work. She had a job. She quit going to work. I would go to work, but I'd have to leave the bench constantly, and I sat in my office most of the time crying because I was listening about other kids that had drug problems, and all I could see was my daughter. I stopped golfing. I stopped doing all of the things that I loved to do. I quit traveling because I was afraid to be too far away. I started doing all the same things that she did. We mirror their addiction, and until we get better, they don't get better. I'm going to say that one more time. Until the families get better, the addict doesn't get better. Once I started going to meetings and I learned what I was doing to enable, and I will tell you that I almost loved my daughter to death. She was 126 pounds when this started, a very healthy looking teenager, and I thought if I just love her more, give her more, watch every move that she makes, follow her around, be diligent doing all of that, lecture her more, scream at her more, that she'll stop this. And all I did was push her farther and farther into her addiction. And because she could see the fear I had, she manipulated me like you cannot imagine. The one thing I will tell you, if you are living with an addict, there's only one thing I can tell you for sure, and that's they are lying to you with every breath they take. They do not tell the truth, ever. Okay? So if they tell you, hey, I'm not using today, Mom, don't worry about it, I got this, lie. If they're not in treatment, they are lying. Okay? So you've got to be diligent and you have to understand addiction and how to deal with it. We have 12-step programs for families called Families Anonymous. Just like kids go to AA or NA, families should be going to FA, where you're with other families that are talking about the insanity that they were doing in their households that kept their kids in their addiction. When I started working a 12-step program and I could no longer be manipulated, guess what happened? My daughter got better. We are a part of this, and we need to own that and be a part of it. We don't just send them away and go about our merry lives. We're affected by it, and we need to heal just like they do. And believe it or not, good can come out of addiction. I remember one of my daughter's counselors telling me, one day you're going to look back and realize that her addiction is a blessing in your life, and it truly has been. I'm a better person because of it. I'm less judgmental. I'm a better friend. I'm a better mother because I can't be manipulated anymore, and I draw my boundaries and I stick to them. I've learned how to love in a different way, and I'm a better community member because I'm out talking to good people like you, trying to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. So her addiction has been a blessing in my life. It truly has. I don't wish that blessing on any of you. It's a blessing that's been good for me, but I would not wish this disease on my worst enemy. It is hard, and every day of your life is a struggle while your family member is going through it. So reach out there. There's people that will help you through this. Yes?
So since we're talking about that, how do we get the phone numbers? Who do we contact? Is there a
Okay.
template?
You can go to familiesagainstnarcotics.org. okay? There is a ton of information on that website. There are also a lot of phone numbers on that website, and I will make sure that the people that organize this get some literature for you that they can pass out to you. You can also go to hopenothandcuffs.com and find out which police departments are participating, and if you don't trust going to a police department, you can fill out an online application saying, I'm an addict, I need help, and somebody will call you back within an hour to start the process of finding help for you. So we're there to help you whatever way we can. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Another question, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Because the kids are ages 17, 18, 19, are we allowed to go online and sign these kids in?
Well, treatment can only happen if the person that needs treatment wants it. You know, but you need to start having the discussion and learning what you can do to help force that. I will tell you, for my daughter, it was like either you will go to treatment or tomorrow morning you need to pack a bag and tell me what corner you want me to drop you off at. Okay? I mean, that sounds pretty bold, but that's exactly what I did, and guess what? The next morning she was in treatment. Now, you got to know your kid, and I'm not telling any parent to go do that. I want to make that clear. Addiction is something that everybody finds their own route to it, and every parent finds their own route to it. So I'm not telling anybody what you should do, but you need to start talking to parents about this and find out what works and what doesn't work, so you can start drawing boundaries and help push your person. Everybody says addicts have to hit rock bottom before they'll get clean. You can help raise that bottom by your behavior. And that's what the parents here need to learn how to do, is to raise that bottom. If you're giving your kid money, if you're giving them a warm place to live, if you're feeding them every night, and cooking all your wonderful Chaldean dishes for them, there's no reason to get clean, guys. That's a pretty darn good life. You know, so you need to, so you need to make sure that you're doing what's necessary to help push them into the recovery. And then you need to tell them, I love you, and I'm here to support your recovery, but I will not support your using anymore. Very easy words. And when my daughter would start screaming, you hate me, how can you do this to me, blah, 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 I would very simply say, I love you to death, and I'm really sorry you feel that way. End of discussion. Can't argue with that one. So you need to learn how to talk to people that are addicted, because you have to love them very different than you love someone who's not addicted to drugs. You have to learn to love them differently. You still love them, you just do it a little bit differently. Did you have a question? No? Anybody else? Yes. Nice and loud.
So we already know that there can be a problem and then there's a solution to it. But what about for preventing it too? So as a mom who had a daughter that went through it, and then you have the career also with the experiences that you see, for parents with younger children that might be getting into that group pretty soon or are going to be exposed to it soon, are there anything other than educating them, any other tips that you might be able to provide in terms of hopefully preventing?
Well, I remember at one of our very first meetings, we asked a lot of young people who had been addicted to drugs, what advice do you have for parents? And they said, make sure that they're connected to God, because that way if they go astray, they'll find their way back again, and say no and say it often. We have to learn to start drawing lines for our kids and saying no to them. Kids that get everything and you're very permissive with them, they don't understand when they run into their first roadblock. Those are the two things that addicts said. The other thing is to talk to them, educate them very young. Don't let them see you popping a lot of pills. Kids mimic what we see. I mean, we have all these studies on cigarettes that if you smoke in front of your kids, they're apt to smoke too. Don't be taking a bunch of pills. If you have to take medication, go into your bathroom, close your door, do what you need to do, and then come back out. Don't let your kids see you popping pills all the time. You know, they learn behavior from us. So those are some of the very simple things you can do. And then safeguard your house. Make sure that there aren't a lot of medications. I mean, when you open up your medicine cabinet, it should have things like Band-Aids and antiseptics in it. It should not have bottles of pills. And if it does, you need to change that. Because we need to change the way we look at drugs. I'll give you a perfect example of how lax we've gotten about it. I have a very dear friend of mine who's a nurse, and I'm always talking about this with her and how the medical community has really perpetuated this problem about us. And she goes, you know, you're just a mom and you're gung-ho about this because it happened to you. And I said, well, here's what I want you to do tomorrow. I want you to go to work and say that you didn't sleep well last night, that you're really anxious today because you have to give a presentation this afternoon, that you don't feel prepared, you're not rested, and that you're really flipping out over this. And just watch what happens. So the next day, she went to the nurse's station, she did that, and 3 nurses offered her a Xanax. That's a felony. 3 nurses just committed a felony. Sharing drugs is a felony. We have forgotten that. I've done it. I was at the airport last year going to Italy, and a doctor from one of our local hospitals walked up and asked me for an Ambien. And I said, excuse me? And he said, yeah, you know, I forgot to write myself a prescription and I can't sleep on planes. I didn't say, hey, I'm Judge Davis, you know, and I run families against narcotics. I didn't want to embarrass him. But later he saw me again. He said, hey, did you find an Ambien? I said, I wasn't out looking for one, and I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Judge Davis, and I run families against narcotics. And he went, oh my God. And I told him, I said, do you realize that you just committed a felony and you asked me to commit one too? You need to stop that. That's what's wrong in our society. Are people treating drugs with such disrespect as what you just did? We need to get a new respect for drugs in our country. We shouldn't be obliterating everything to death. We need to learn to live with life. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure about that for you or for the police, but I understand that those at home and stuff like that, but now at schools, they are actually offered free, whoever drug dealers, I know 3 Chaldean kids, they were in school, they were drug dealers inside the school with guns and everything. And they know exactly when the cameras turn, when the cameras are off, and which doors they can go out and they come in, or whatever. Everything about the system inside the school. Now, what can the school do to prevent this? And most of the students that are in high school, a lot of them got addicted because it was offered free in the school. That someone wanted to, hey, you want to try this? Hey, it was offered to my kid first. My kid was smart enough to tell me about it, talk to me, and I can help her with it. But other kids might not. They might actually like to try out some stuff, and they get addicted to it, then they start buying it. And as parents, we do give our kids a lot of money. By the way, in high school, they do not need more than $3 for lunch. Sandwich is $2.50. They can get a drink from the machine. $3, $4. It's plenty to get food if they don't want to get from the cafeteria. If they want to buy whatever they're selling in Stevenson. But the truth is, school needs to do something more to prevent this.
Well, they can only do what they know about. So if you know there's kids that are dealing and you know their names, you need to call the police and tell them about it.
I didn't know their names, but
Yeah.
I knew they were students in the school. And for a fact now, they are going back to school because they recruited more students to sell inside the school.
Well, then your police officers need to know that. They can take drug dogs in. And a lot of schools are doing that. They have drug dogs that go into the schools all the time and into the parking lots because kids are smart. If they know drug dogs are coming into the school, they hide their drugs in their cars or outside. So the police are the people that you would report that stuff to them.
The dogs do not do anything like I said. They have rules in the school that get them out of the school before the dogs are even in there.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to do it randomly. A lot of schools are starting to random drug test students. The private schools, I know De La Salle, they randomly drug test. That's why my kids are going there. Okay, so we need to start demanding more of our schools. You know, and you guys are the voice there, so start demanding that, you know, we want drug dogs brought in randomly. We hear there's drugs being sold here. The schools, if they don't hear it, they can't do anything about it. You got to be vigilant. Okay, I think we're running out of time. One more question.
Okay, so I know the Utica Community Schools stopped doing like dogs, like drug dogs. How can we get them back into the school? Because I know at my school they have like a lot of kids having like vapes and stuff like that.
Squeaky wheels. You just have to start, if enough parents say we want drug dogs brought in, we hear there's drugs being being sold in the school. Our kids are coming home telling us that. They'll bring them back, and then talk to your local police departments about it as well. Okay, they might be able to help with that. Do we have time for another?
Yeah.
Okay, one more.
Yes, ma'am. How can we make the treatment to be not a choice, to be a must? Treatment for the addiction people.
Because treatment doesn't work if you force it on somebody. I mean, they have to be at least somewhat willing. But I will tell you that most addicts, when they are given good, viable treatment, they want it. Nobody enjoys that lifestyle. Nobody likes you, you have no money, you're usually living on the street, you're homeless, you've lost your job. It's not a pretty picture, guys. So when you get to that point...
I know a parent, okay, that is their son out. He was in the street in Detroit, overdosed. Because they take him out. What do you do with that? We have to be, how...
Yeah, I wish I could tell you I had the answer to every question you're going to ask. I don't. I know that a lot of kids that overdose and are brought back with Narcan, that's their step into treatment. So,
the system needs to change. We need to do something with the system.
well, and we are. But there's a lot of broken pieces to it. I think if you listen to my talk, you'll see it's broken at almost every level, including treatment, and we just need to do better with it. Okay. Thank you. You guys have been a great audience.
I know there are a lot of questions and we could spend a lot of time talking. That's why I said that this is just the beginning and it's an important conversation to continue to have. Just to address that, a lot of parents will call us priests and say, Father, you have to come here and you have to talk to my kid. Because not just drug addiction, it could be something else. And my first question is, do they want to talk to me? Because just as the judge said, look, God has given us a will, and He does not force anything on us. And when someone is not freely and willingly want to overcome something, then it's not going to happen. Now, obviously, there's nothing that can happen going back and changing anything. Not a community, not a family, not the mom that kicked out her son. And that's something that she, in her mind, has to suffer with, right? And that's something that could have been prevented. Nobody could know, no one can say. And there is not one answer that is a blanket statement for everyone. Maybe in certain cases, you have to go here and you have to get treatment, and maybe that will allow them to taste, okay, could be something that will work for other, but at the end of the day, the first step is to admit you have a problem, and some people don't think it's a problem. That's a very big issue, and so as the judge mentioned, in our own community there are taboos. I will share a quick story. When I was at St. Thomas, we had a burglary at the grotto, and there was someone had come in and stole money from the candle box in the grotto. This was earlier on in the week, and throughout the week there were a lot of different posts and everything. So when Sunday came about, that following Sunday, and I preached, I was livid. Not that this man broke into the grotto. I was more upset at the response that people had about him breaking into the grotto. The amount of people that shamed him, the amount of people that, the disgusting words. Not a single person said, this man is more than likely an addict and needs help. What can we do to support him? Not one person said it. So later on, he went to jail for this because he had other issues. He went to jail immediately after this. And then the day he was released from jail, he died of an overdose. Now, this is something for all of us to think about. Does each one of us play a particular role in, or have a particular fault in it? And the argument can be yes. because the reason why people don't want to admit that they have a problem or to seek help is because they're afraid of what we're going to say. Plain and simple. And this doesn't just have to do with drugs, this has to do with every other problem. Okay? Every other taboo problem. And one awesome group that is in our community organization is Peter's Angels. And I will let Iman talk to you more about how it came about and what they can do. But I will say, and when I work with Iman, the biggest struggle is people don't want to talk about it. And so I remember we used to meet regularly, and it was an open invitation to families, and families stopped coming, parents stopped coming, because it was like, I don't want anybody to think my kid has a problem, because then, just as the judge said, it reflects on me. And so this is something that we, as a community, and I know Yvonne asked the question, you know, one is to educate your children, and number two, the most important thing to educate your children is to love these people, right? To love everyone, especially those who are seeking a relief of pain, right? Because ultimately, it's suffering, and the judge talked about physical suffering that initiates it. But really, the addiction is a cure of a particular pain, emotionally or spiritually. And so to teach your children to love unconditionally is the greatest thing we can do to help prevent deaths, and we won't know how to prevent them. So without further ado, I just want to introduce Iman Newman, one of the founders of Peter's Angels.
Thank you. It's what a great turnout, and really it's very encouraging to talk about, because for a moment I was thinking, you know, Judge Lynda has covered everything. Anyway, my name is Iman Newman Al-Shamaoun, and we started Peter's Angels, raising awareness against the drugs, the week that I buried my nephew. My nephew was 26 years old. We were supposed to prepare for his wedding, but we buried him. Well, then this way I said, I think it's enough to be ashamed, to be just hidden our head in the sand and trying just to thinking what the families, what the community gonna say about us. I'm a social worker, and also I have a degree in mortuary science. But I tell you one thing, 2014, I did not know anything about drugs. Yes, I'm educated. Yes, I do read a lot. Yes, I do listen to the news, but it doesn't hit me because it doesn't relate to me. When my nephew passed away, I said, well, let's this, as Judge Lynda mentioned, that, you know, it was a blessing for her daughter to be addicted. I think that it was a blessing. No, it wasn't a blessing, but it was an eye-opening for me that losing a 26-year-old nephew, where his parents were waiting for him for 9 years, because he got 2 siblings older than him. Peter was very smart. He was on the top of the street, a student. He was very delicate. His mom was overprotected with him. But anyway, we lost him. Just to make it too short, we don't have that much time to talk about Peter's Angels. So I started Peter's Angels summer 2015 was exactly where Peter's passed away. August 13, 2015. August was maybe 12 or 17. I approached my niece, his sister. I told her, Angie, I'm gonna start an awareness. I'm gonna start an organization that we bring the awareness within the community about the drugs. Because yes, we all are educated, but we don't know anything about drugs. We don't know the effects of the drugs. We don't know how they get it. Who's selling it to them? We don't know. And actually, it's not only we don't know, but we always hide. We don't want to see the truth. We don't want to see what's going on. We want to see that our children are engaged in some unusual activities, and we always listen to them and we believe them. And thus we are enabling them. So Peter's Angels is important, yes, important. We provide all the resources. This is just a simple of what we are doing. We started in January 2016, and every month we were meeting at Mother of God Church last Thursday of the month. We started with 100 attendants, like here, like you, and then month by month was reducing. We started at St. Joseph Church, and I was expecting more people coming, and I was surprised. We were only 10. I have about 8 people in my committee. I have on board, I have doctors. I have a detox clinic, which I believe in the detox clinic. Dr. Hiam is here, and with her husband, they were with us from day one. We have a psychiatrist, we have a psychologist, we have a social worker. I'm a social worker, and I have a counselor. And we have Father Andrew. He came a couple times with us. And then we are more at St. Joseph, the whole board. We were there, and there was only 2 ladies attending, and they were my friend. So who else would come? I receive a lot of calls. I would tell you that from 2015 until now, we help many families. We receive many calls. And every time, surprisingly, I receive a call, we give an advice, and then after a month, I follow up. The son or the daughter are doing really well, this is a miracle. You are suspicious something, and then after a month, he's becoming really well. That's very good. That's very good. How many people we have treated? We are raising in awareness, and we provide all the resources, and we have all the rehabs, and we have clinics, and we have many things to help our community. And at the end, we have many, every few months, they die overdose. I don't want anybody to die overdose. I don't want to bury one of my community. We are hard workers. We deserve to have good children. That's why I decided 501c3, it's a non-profit organization, and we have a 501c3, which is I could receive donations, so I could bring Peter's dream to reality, which it was. He was always telling me, Auntie, why we don't have anybody from our community who could look after us? Because we understand our culture, we know where we are coming. We have 3 pillars to deal with the patient or with our loved one. It's not only him and the family, it's him, family, and community. We are 3 pillars. Anyone we lose for overdose, the whole community is standing up. And in result of Peter's Angels and all our meetings, and we have Dr. George, who was detox clinic operated for about 13, 15 years. He brought us the best, he prepared the best workshop. And how many we have at that workshop? We have had about 30 people only, and 10 of us from the board. So 20 people, and it was very effective, it was very influential. But yet, our community, we don't want to hear, because we don't want anybody to know about our weakness. It's a disease, it's a mental disease, it's a brain disease. We have to treat the addicts as a person who needs our love, our acceptance, our encouragement. We don't need that person or that individual to be excluded from the family as something, it's like a worm. He's not, she's not. We need to accept them, we need to encourage them, we need to love them. And also on the top of it, those who receive a treatment, they need to follow up. And this is our mission. Peter's Angels mission is not only receiving or providing resource for the time being, it's providing all the resources that we have. But on the top of it, the 501c3, we needed to have transitional home. We need to have a house where our addicted patients can be there, but they understand their culture, so we could put them back to work and to be effective citizens. We work very hard, and my job today is just to encourage every single one. Sitting here today, it means that if we are about 100 or 120, that means you could save at least 300 to 400 families, maybe because you're coming across and you have learned something today where you could send these families who are affected by drugs, whether it's the drugs and an opiates or anything, but remember that some of them, they become addicted involuntarily because of maybe an accident, maybe anyway, like teeth pulling or anything, anywhere else, or a sports injury, and then they continue addicted to these opiates. So what I'm encouraging you, just to know that we are there for you. It's very important that we are an educated community. We have a facility from our community, Chaldeans, where they understand the culture, where we understand what the stigma is in Ebo, it's a sickness, it's a disease. It's not going to affect you as much as cancer or diabetes or high blood pressure would affect any other person. I'm here today just to encourage you that it's a disease. Anyone who have anybody, regardless, even if you come across by friends in school, at work, just tell them. Let them seek help, and that seeking help means a lot. Peter's Angels is to save lives, not to bring shame or stigma to our community. I'm here just to encourage us and to tell you that how much we love our community, and this is our duty. We know something, we have to tell everyone about it. It's not to keep it just for myself. So, some of the programs we have, we brought Brian's Hope. She taught us how to save lives until the ambulance comes by the Narcan. Shots, and the other kind, which is a spray. So, and I'm myself, I have been through all that study, and I'm certified now, and I could demonstrate some of these studies that we have, and you could become, every one of you could become an Narcan person, and you could save lives. You don't know, maybe you are in the street, you are in the market, you are shopping, and somebody needs your help, then you have that shots with you, and we could give it free to you. And when we have a workshop again, then it will be announced, and you could come, and we have one in November 8th. It will be at Regency Manor, and we will have Brian's Home there. They will demonstrate the Narcan shots, and they will give it free to everyone who attended and go through the exercise. So just to make it short, and I hope I didn't take too long. And so please remember that we have Peter's Angels, we have a hotline, and we have brochures. You could take some of them. You will see the symptoms, the withdrawal symptoms, and the signs of an addict, and how should you treat it. On the top of it, just remember that there's many resources available for you, and everything is confidential. We don't even ask about the name, just for the record, and we ask only for the last name, and that is very confidential. We don't share it with anybody. One of our angels we have here from Peter's Angels, we have Eileen, and we have other two who became angels, and I sent them to many houses. They talk to the patient, and they always convince him or her to seek help. So please pray and continue praying for our community so we could have a good program and we could continue. Here I'm presenting to you Eileen, and she's a good speaker.
I'm just going to intercept if you want to come here. So it does take, just so you guys are aware, I just want you to know what's going on. I know it's a school night, so we're going to try to get you guys out of here in a timely fashion. But again, it's not every day that we're gathering like this, and so Eileen is going to share with us courageously her experiences, and then after that, we will be showing you a little bit of some aspects of the display that is here in the back. One thing I did want to just ask, there are one of these sheets back here about the night in real talk, so just if you could just share your family's information, and then really we want to hear your input about tonight, and also any suggested topics that you want to hear about in the future. I mean, we're not here just for our own good, and the group is comprised of yourself, of parents. So if you're interested in helping out with that, but also with Peter's Angels, a lot of people are asking, what can I do? That's something that it's a place that you could start, is kind of talking to Iman, seeing how maybe you could be a part of that, maybe rehab center or whatever projects they have. So again, I want to introduce and courageously thank her for her courage. To be able to speak in front of the community, as we mentioned earlier, is not the easiest thing for us. Thank you.
So to make myself comfortable, sometimes I sit down. I'm going to ask, though, I see some of you recording, just for anonymity, which means me being anonymous, I ask that you don't record anything right now. Hear it, listen to it, maybe take back something that you think is helpful or beneficial, but it's just important to me so that I can continue doing what I do, because our community is so intimidating. So my